Section 36 of All About Coffee. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit Librivox.org. Read to you by J.P. Liao. All About Coffee by William Ukers. Coffee exchanges and trading methods. Green coffee buyers in the large importing centers of the United States and Europe recognize two distinct markets in their operation. One of these is called the spot market because of the importers, brokers, jobbers, and roasters trading there deal in actual coffee in warehouses in the consuming country. In New York, the spot market is located in the district of Lower Wall Street, which includes a block or two each side on Front and Water Streets. Here, coffee importers, coffee roasters, coffee dealers, and coffee brokers conduct their street sales. The other market is designated as the futures market, and the trading is not concerned with actual coffee, but with the purchase or sale of contracts for future delivery of coffee that may still be on the trees in the producing country. Futures, or options as they are frequently called, are dealt in only on a coffee exchange. The principal exchanges are in New York, Havre, and Hamburg. New Orleans and San Francisco exchange dealers trade on their own local boards of trade. Coffee exchange contracts are dealt in just like stocks and bonds. They are settled by the payment of the difference, or margin, and the option of delivering actual coffee is seldom exercised. Generally, the operations are either in the nature of ordinary speculation on margin or for the legitimate purpose of effecting hedges against holdings or short sales of actual coffees. The New York Coffee and Sugar Exchange, the most important in the world because of the volume of its business, deals in all coffees from North, South, and Central America, the West Indies, and the East Indies, except those of the Robusta variety, and use type number 7 as the basis for all exchange quotations. All other types are judged in relation to it. In determining the number of a type, the coffee is graded by the number of imperfections contained in it. These imperfections are black beans, broken beans, shells, immature beans, Quakers, stones, and pods. For counting the imperfection, the black bean has been taken as the basis unit, and all imperfections, no matter what they may be, are calculated in terms of black beans, according to a scale, which is practically as follows. The black bean scale. 3 shells equates to 5 Quakers, equates to 5 broken beans, equates to 1 pod, equates to 1 medium-sized stone, equates to 2 small stones, which equates to 1 black bean, and 1 large stone equates to 2 to 3 black beans. By this scale, a coffee containing no imperfections would be classified as type number 1. The test is made on 1 pound samples. If a sample shows 6 black beans or equivalent imperfections, it is graded as number 2. If 13 black beans, as number 3. If 29 black beans, as number 4. If 60 black beans, as number 5. If 110 black beans, as number 6. And if more than 110 black beans, as number 7 or number 8. These two are graded by comparison with recognized exchange types. Coffee grading lower than number 8 are not admissible to this country. The quotation relationship of other types with the basic Rio number 7 is shown in the table below. By this scale, one can determine that when Rio number 7 is quoted at 17.1 cent, Rio number 2 is 18.6 cents, Santos number 3 19.1 cent, and Bogota number 5 18.1 cent. The quotations are on the pound and cents basis. In the spot market, a trader may also buy or sell coffee to arrive. That is a consignment that is aboard ship on the way to the market. Coffee is shipped to New York either on a consignment basis and sold for a commission, or it may have been bought in the shipping port and be already the property of an importer. When shipped on consignment, a wholesaler usually buys on the in-store contract, which provides that the purchaser must take delivery at the warehouse. though he is generally given a month's storage privilege before removal of the coffee. The practice among New York importers at present is to buy coffee on either the basis of FOB, delivery steamer at loading port, or delivery CNF, or cost and freight, or CIF, cost, insurance, and freight, port of destination. Payment is made by letter of credit drawn on a New York or London bank, entitling the exporter to draw at 90 days' sight against the shipping documents, so that the shipment will be in the hands of the purchaser long before the draft is made. Frequently, a jobber acts as his own importer of Brazil coffee, buying direct from the exporter without utilizing the agency of a broker or a regular importing firm. Brazil coffee is bought with the stipulation that differences between samples and the coffee actually delivered may be adjusted either on Brazil grading, half difference, or full difference, and with the further provision that if the delivery is a full type higher or lower than specified in the contract, the entire shipment may be rejected. Under the Brazil grading provision, the buyer must accept delivery if the coffee is better than the next lower type, even though not up to the type ordered, and if the coffee is of a higher type than contracted for, he need not pay the difference for it. In buying on the half difference or full difference basis, the buyer is entitled to the payment for half the difference or the full difference, respectively, for any undergrading, or must pay the seller accordingly if there is any overgrading. When a buyer specifies special features of description, in addition to type, some sellers protect themselves against claims for difference on this score by inserting in the contract a clause to the effect that the description is given in good faith but is not guaranteed by the seller. How the New York Exchange functions. When the New York Coffee Exchange was incorporated in 1881, its charter stated its purpose to be to provide, regulate, and maintain a suitable building, room, or rooms for the purchase and sales of coffee and other similar grocery articles in the city of New York, to adjust controversies between members, to inculcate and establish just and equitable principles in the trade, to establish and maintain uniformity in its rules, regulations, and usages, to adopt standards of classification, to acquire, preserve, and disseminate useful and valuable business information, and generally to promote the above-mentioned trade in the city of New York, increase its amounts, and augment the facilities with which it may be conducted. In the promotion of trade at New York, the exchange has been highly successful. From time to time, it has been criticized, and more than once, coffee traders in the East and in the West have raised a question as to its value to non-speculating members. There are those who believe it serves a useful purpose, and others who call it a huge pool room. To say that, on the whole, it is not of benefit to the trade would be untrue. As one of its champions pointed out in 1914, when it shut down for a period of 4 months on the account of the World War, the ability to discount the future is a necessity, and demands the facilities that a unit of centralization like the exchange affords. There's no difference between a purchase of coffee and one of a future month on options. The experience gained here and abroad demonstrates that any check placed upon such dealings is detrimental, with far-reaching effects upon the whole body of the trade. Unquestionably, the exchange is a powerful factor as a regulator of extremes in the market. The experience gained in Germany, where an embargo was placed upon transactions in futures, is illuminating. The disastrous effects were so plain that the authorities were forced to abandon their objections and permit a resumption of the business along the old lines. But a good thing can be abused, and the opportunity to gamble in options availed of by so many is the increment that disturbs the legitimacy of the market and creates the opposition to the whole proposition. When the exchange is ready to insist that every transaction in futures must be a legitimate one, and that every trader under its jurisdiction using the facilities of the exchange is made to realize that any operations that are purely of a gambling nature will subject him to severe discipline. Then the coffee exchange will begin to stem the tide of an ever-growing opposition by the general public. The New York Legislative Committee on Speculations in Securities and Commodities had the following to say on the coffee exchange in its report to Governor Charles E. Hughes in 1909. The coffee exchange, was established in order to supply a daily market where coffee could be bought and sold and to fix quotations, therefore, in distinction from the former method of alternate glut and scarcity, with wide variations in price, in short, to create stability and certainty in trading in an important article of commerce. This it has accomplished, and it has made New York the most important primary coffee market in the United States. But there has been recently introduced a non-commercial factor known as valorization, a governmental scheme of Brazil by which the public treasury has assumed to purchase and hold a certain percentage of the coffee grown there, in order to prevent a decline of the price. This has created abnormal conditions in the coffee trade. All transactions must be reported by the seller to the superintendent of the exchange with an exact statement of the time and terms of delivery. The record shows that the average annual sales in the past 5 years have been in excess of 16 million bags of 130 pounds each. Contracts may be transferred or offset by voluntary clearings by groups of members. There is no general clearing system. There is a commendable rule providing that, in case of a corner, the officials may fix a settlement price for contracts to avoid disastrous failures. The original initiation fee was $250. Seats on the exchange once sold for as low as $110. In January 1916, there was a sale at $3,000. In October 1916, there was a sale for $5,000. In April 1921, 3 seats were sold for $5,500 each, but the record price of $8,600 was paid in 1919. Seats are now, 1922, worth about $6,000. The exchange includes in its membership 323 brokers, importers, dealers, and roasters. Membership is passed upon by a committee on membership. But anyone 21 years old, resident or non-resident, of good character and commercial standing, is eligible when proposed and seconded by exchange members. The committee refers the application with its recommendation to the Board of Managers, which takes a ballot. The adverse vote of 1/3 of all votes cast rejects. The exchange elects annually a president, a vice president, and a treasurer, who performs the usual duties of exchange officers. The real governing body is the Board of Managers, consisting of the president, vice president, treasurer, and 12 other members. This governing board, meeting monthly, appoints the necessary subordinate officers and employees, and fixes their compensation, and may summon before them any officer or member for any purpose whatsoever. It appoints the secretary of the exchange from among its own number, a superintendent of the exchange, and numerous committees which are in active charge of specified activities. It also licenses the necessary coffee graders, warehousemen, weighmasters, and samplers of the exchange. A brief discussion of the duties of the superintendent and the various committees will help to explain the methods of the exchange market. The superintendent, under the direction of the Board of Managers, has charge of the details of its work and of that of the various committees. He keeps all the books and documents of the exchange. collects and pays over to the treasurer all the monies due to the exchange, not otherwise provided for, receives, deposits, and pays over all margins on coffee contracts, has active charge of the exchange rooms and the bulletin board, and manages and appoints, with the consent of the board of managers, the assistants needed to perform the details of the work under his charge. One of the functions of the exchange is to grade and declassify coffee, in which it takes every possible precaution. The rule provides for 8 standard grades, and only licensed graders are permitted to pass upon the product handled on the exchange. There are 25 of these graders, one of whom is appointed as a supervisor of types, to provide fresh standards and to maintain them as nearly as possible on an equity. When these standards are approved by the board and the exchange, they remain in force for a year. When coffee is received at a licensed warehouse, 2 official graders are chosen, one by the buyer and one by the seller. These graders receive 4 cents a bag if employed by a member, 8 cents a bag if employed by a non-member. If the graders disagree, their differences are referred to the Board of Coffee Arbitrators, consisting of 10 experts appointed by the Board of Managers. The superintendent selects by lot 3 of these arbitrators, who decide on the basis of the samples submitted, but will not make a decision lowering the grade below that of the lowest submitted, nor higher than the highest. If the disputants do not change the grading to come within the arbitrator's findings, the samples are sent to the entire Board of Arbitrators, exclusive to those who may have been the original graders, and final decision is made by majority vote. As soon as the coffee is graded, a certificate is issued stating the grades, and bearing the signatures of the superintendent and graders. This certificate is conclusive evidence of the grade as far as the parties involved are concerned, for the subsequent 12 months. The buyer receives the original and the seller a duplicate. The rules provide that weights decided upon the initial delivery are good during the life of the grading certificate for redelivery, with definite allowances to the receiver on redelivery of 1/4 pound a bag a month, instead of having to reweigh and resample for every separate delivery, as formerly. As claims and trade controversies occasionally arise, the exchange has provided means for their peaceful settlement. The Board of Managers elect annually an arbitration committee of 5 members, who swear to decide disputes fairly. This is the only committee on the exchange that has power to adjudicate disputes between members and non-members, and its services must be sought by the disputants, who must agree to abide by its decision. An adjudication committee of 7 is annually chosen from the membership by the managers, to adjust all claims and controversies between members arising out of any merchandise transaction. If notice in writing of such claim or controversy, and of the intention to demand an adjudication thereon, be served by either party hitherto within 10 days from the assignment thereof. Within 3 days of the serving of this notice, each disputant selects an exchange member as his adjudicator, and these 2 name the third, who must be a member of the adjudicating committee. Even this decision may be appealed to the Board of Managers, which, if it finds the grounds of appeal good, as decided by majority vote, appoints an appeal committee of 5, of whom 3 must be members of the board. This last committee's decision is final. No new testimony bearing on the case may be introduced after the case has been closed by the adjudicators. Arbitration is voluntary with both parties, while adjudication is compulsory upon the application of either. Another committee of trade importance is the Spot Quotation Committee of 5 exchange members. Each day at 2 o'clock, except on Saturdays, when it meets at 11:45, this committee by a majority vote establishes the official daily market quotation of number 7 coffee. There is likewise a committee on quotations of futures. This committee of 5 meets daily immediately after the first call and at the close of the exchange and reports to the superintendent the tone and price of the contract market, to be posted on the blackboard and transmitted to other exchanges and commercial bodies. A committee of 5 on trade and statistics has the important function of reporting to the board as the regulations for the purchase, sale, transportation, and custody of merchandise, and it attempts to establish uniformity in such matters between different markets. It has charge also of all matters pertaining to the supply of newspapers, market reports, telegraphic and statistical information for the use of the exchange. In the early 80s, the exchange abolished the old method of keeping coffee statistics, and the basis then adopted has since been accepted by all the large coffee markets of the world. The minimum rates of the commission on coffee per contract of 250 bags for members of the exchange residing in the United States are based upon a price as follows, quoting from the exchange bylaws adopted June 8, 1920. Coffee exchange commission rates per contract of 250 bags. Commission rates below 10 cents. Commission is $6.25. Brokerage, $1.50. Commission rates above 10 cents to 19.99 cents. Commission is $7.50. Brokerage, $1.75. Commission rates 20 cents and above. Commission $10. Brokerage $2. For non-members residing within the United States, double the above rates of commission shall be charged. For members and non-members residing outside of the United States, a commission of $2.50 shall be charged in addition to the above rates. Whenever before 30 minutes after the closing of the exchange, a member gives to another member for clearance purchases and sales of contracts corresponding in all respects except as to price, made during the day by himself or for his account, when present on the floor of the exchange. A charge for each contract shall be made equal to the corresponding floor brokerage rate for buying and selling, in addition to any floor brokerage incurred. Members procuring business for other members may, by agreement, be entitled to 1/2 the commission rates for non-members prescribed in this section, less the corresponding brokerage charge, whether paid or not. When a transferable notice is given or received by a customer in fulfillment of a contract, the brokerage in that case shall not be less than 1/2 of the corresponding buying or selling commission prescribed in Section 103. Other committees are the Finance Committee, 2. To audit bills, claim against the exchange, to direct deposits and investments, and to audit the monthly and yearly accounts of the Treasurer. A Law Committee, 3. To deal with matters of legislation, a membership and floor committee, 5, and a nominating committee, 5, organized as above outlined, and with a well-established code of trade rules, the exchange annually transacts a large number of sales in a business-like way. There is a considerable trading in future contracts, and a standard form has been adopted by the exchange. No future contracts are valid unless they are made in the following form. Brazil Coffee, Los Santos, Office of blank, New York blank, 19 blank. Sold for 32,500 pounds in about 250 bags of coffee, growth of North, South, or Central America, West Indies, or East Indies, excepting coffee known as Robusta, and also any coffee of new or unknown growth, deliverable from licensed warehouse in the Port of New York, between the first and last days of blank date next inclusive. The delivery within such time to be at seller's option upon a notice to buyer of either 5, 6, or 7 days, as may be prescribed by the trade rules. The coffee to be of any grade from number 8 to number 1 inclusive. No coffee to grade below number 8. provided the average grade of Brazilian coffees shall not be above number 3. Nothing in this contract, however, shall be construed as prohibiting a delivery averaging above number 3 at the number 3 grade, at the rate of blank cents per pound for number 7, with additions or deductions for any other grades according to the rates of the New York Coffee and Sugar Exchange, existing on the afternoon of the date previous to the date of the notice of delivery. Either party to have the right to call for margins as the variations of the market for like deliveries may warrant, which margins shall be kept good. This contract is made in view of, and in all respect subject to the rules and conditions established by the New York Coffee and Sugar Exchange, Inc., and in full accordance with Section 102 of the bylaws. Brokerage signatures. Across the face is the following. For and in consideration of $1 to blank sum amount, in hand paid. Receipt whereof is hereby acknowledged blank, accept this contract with all its obligations and conditions. All deliveries on such future contracts must be made from licensed warehouses. There is a separate to arrive contract, but this likewise requires delivery at a licensed warehouse, unless the buyer and the seller have a mutual understanding to deliver the coffee from dock or ex-ship. Margins to protect the contract may be called for by either party. The largest deposit for margins was made in 1904, when $22,661,710 was deposited with the superintendent as required by the exchange rules. The basic grade in a future sale is number 7, but variations are provided as follows. 30 points for Rio, Victoria, and Bahia of all the grades between 7 and 1, and of 50 points between 7 and 8. 50 points is allowed on Santos and all other coffees except between grades 1 and 2 and 2 and 3 Santos, which are allowed 30 points. Thus, the buyer and the seller, when entering upon a transaction, know exactly what the difference will be between the standard number 7 and the coffee that can be delivered. The right to deliver any grade in a future transaction has done much to lessen the probability of corners in coffee, but this protection is further given by the stringent rule that the maximum fluctuations on the exchange can be only 2 cents a pound on coffee in 1 day and 1 cent on sugar. If greater changes should threaten, the exchange operations would automatically cease. False or fictitious sales are prohibited, and all contracts must be reported to the superintendent. All contracts are binding and call for actual delivery. The future contract, besides being used for the delivery of coffee during stated months in the future at a given price, is also used for hedging purposes, as in the grain and cotton markets. Dealers protect themselves against price fluctuations by hedging in the future market. Importers, for instance, when purchasing coffee abroad, frequently sell an equal amount for future delivery on the exchange. When the time for delivery arrives, it is simply a question of calculation of the market conditions, whether it is more advantageous to repurchase the sales made as a hedge, or as a kind of insurance to protect themselves against loss, and free the coffee so engaged, or to make delivery of the coffee as it comes in. The Board of Managers has power to close the exchange or to suspend trade on such days or parts of days as would, in their judgment, for the exchange's best interest. The Clearing Association is a recent outgrowth of the exchange, and is composed exclusively of exchange members. Every member has to bring his contracts up to market closing every night, either by making a deposit with the association to cover his balances, or by withdrawing in case he should be over. Members deposit $15,000 at the time of joining as a guarantee fund. And if the surplus is not sufficient to take care of the balances, the bylaws provide for the levying of assessments. The daily quotations on the coffee exchanges of New York, Av, and before the war of Hamburg determined to a large extent the price of green coffee the world over. The prices prevailing on the New York Coffee and Sugar Exchange are studied by coffee traders in all countries, the fluctuations being reflected in foreign markets as the reports come from the United States. Quotations are cabled from one great market to another, and as each must heed those of the others to some extent, the coffee trade thus obtains a world price, and the effect on supply and demand is universal rather than local, as would be the case if quotations were not exchanged. In 1921, the exchange adopted an amendment to the trade rules and abolished the one-day transferable notice for both coffee and sugar. Foreign coffee quotations. Brazil coffee cable quotations are the market prices, in Rio or Santos, of 10 kilograms of coffee, the price being stated in mil-réis, the monetary unit of Brazil money. The basic grade of coffee at Rio is the number 7 of the New York Coffee Exchange. And at Santos, the International Standard of Good Average, GA, Santos. 1 kilogram, often written kilo or abbreviation to K, is equal to 2 1/5 pounds. And the 10 kilogram standard of quantity is, therefore, equivalent to 22 pounds, or just 1/6 of a standard Brazil bag. The money value is not so simple, since Brazilian paper currency is unstable, and the mil-réis quotation means nothing unless it is considered in connection with the rate of exchange for the same day, i.e. the current gold value of the mil-réis. This gold value is always given with the daily quotations from Brazil, and is expressed in British pence. The par value of the mil-réis, 1,000 reais, is 54.6 cents gold of United States money, but its present actual value is only about 15 cents, and it has been as low as 11 1/4 cents. Our dollar sign is used to denote mil-réis, placing it after the whole number, and before the fractional part expressed in 1/1000ths. Thus, 8 1/4 mil-réis would be written 250 RS. Suppose, for example, a Rio quotation is given at $8.400 with the exchange at 7.5 D. This means 22 pounds of coffee have a gold value of 63 British pence. 8.4 times 7.5 equals 63, or 5/3, as the Englishman would write it, which is equal to 1.27.5, making the coffee worth 5.8 cents per pound. Of course, the person familiar with Brazil quotations will not need to make this reduction to the pound-cent term in order to understand the figures. They will have a proper relative meaning to him in their original form, and it must not be overlooked that it is in this form only that they express correctly the value of the coffee in Brazil. It may make a great difference to the Brazilian planter or exporter whether an increased gold value of his coffee arises through a higher mil-réis bid or an appreciated exchange, simply on the account of local currency considerations. That is to say, the purchasing power of a mil-réis in Brazil will not necessarily vary exactly as the rate of exchange on London. London quotations are made in shillings and pence on 100 weight CWT of coffee. This CWT is not 100 pounds, but 112 pounds, 1/20th of the English ton, or art long ton, of 2,240 pounds. And in all English coffee statistics, the coffee quantities are expressed in this ton. A London quotation of 30/9, or 30 shillings and 9 pence, for example, is equivalent to $7.44 for 112 pounds of coffee, or 6.64 cents per pound at the normal rate of exchange, $4.80 to $4.86 the pound sterling. At Av, the coffee price is given in francs on a quantity of 50 kilograms. This is 110 pounds and almost as much, therefore, as the British CWT. In normal times, the franc is equal to 19.3 cents. A French quotation of 37.5, for instance, means therefore $7.19 for 110 pounds of coffee, or 6.53 cents per pound. The Hamburg quotation, formerly from Brazil per 50 kilos, is made on 1 pound German, equal to half kilogram, and is expressed in pfennigs. 1 pfennig is 1/100th of a mark, and the mark once was equal to 23.8 cents. A German quotation of, say, 31 means therefore 7.38 cents. 31 times 0.238 equals 7.378 for 1.1 pounds, or 6.71 cents per pound. 3 kinds of brokers. In the coffee trade, there are 3 kinds of brokers: floor, spot, and cost and freight. Floor brokers are those who buy and sell options on the coffee exchange for a fixed consideration per lot of 250 bags. There is at present, in 1922, a stamp tax of 2 cents on each $100 value, or fraction thereof, figured on each separate lot. Spot brokers are those who deal in actual coffee, selling from jobber to jobber, or representing out-of-town houses. The seller paying a commission of about 15 cents a bag in small lots, and half of 1 cent in large lots. Cost and freight brokers represent Brazilian accounts, and generally receive a brokerage of 1 1/4%. On out-of-town business, they usually split the commission with the out-of-town or local brokers. The out-of-town brokers sometimes, however, deal direct with the importer. All brokers except floor brokers are sometimes called street brokers. Most of the large New York, New Orleans, and San Francisco brokerage houses also do a commission business, handling one or more Brazilian or other coffee-producing country accounts. Important rulings affecting coffee trade. The United States have no coffee law as they have a tea law, prescribing purity, quality, and finesse for consumption. But buyers and sellers of green coffee are required to observe certain well-defined federal rules and regulations relating specifically to coffee. Up to the year 1906, when the Pure Food and Drug Act became law, the green coffee trade was practically unhampered, and several irregularities developed, calling into existence federal laws that were designed to protect the consumer against trade abuses, and at the same time to raise the standards of coffee trading. Under these regulations, it is legal to import into this country a coffee that grades below a number 8 exchange type, which generally contains a large proportion of sour or damaged beans, known in the trade as blackjack or damaged coffee, as found in skimmings. Blackjack is a term applied to coffee that has turned black during the process of curing, or in the hold of a ship during transportation, or it may be due to a blighting disease. Another ruling is intended to prevail the sale of artificially sweated coffee, which has been submitted to a steaming process to give the beans the extra brown appearance of high-grade East Indian and mocha coffees, which have been naturally sweated in the holds of sailing vessels during the long journey to American ports. Up to the time that the Pure Food and Drugs Act went into effect, artificial sweating was resorted to by some coffee firms. And out of that practice grew a suit that resulted in a federal court decision sustaining the Pure Food Act and classifying the practice as adulteration and misbranding. The act also intended to prevent the sale of coffees under trade names that do not properly belong to them. For example, only coffees grown on the island of Java can properly be labeled and sold as Javas. Coffees from Sumatra, Timor, etc., must be sold under their respective names. Food Inspection Decision number 82, which limited the use of the term Java to the coffee grown on the island of Java, was sustained in a service and regulatory announcement issued in January 1916. Likewise, the name mocha may be used only for coffees of Arabia. Before the Pure Food Law was enacted, it was frequently the custom to mix bourbon Santos with mocha and to sell the blend as mocha. Also, Abyssinian coffees were generally known in the trade as longberry mocha, or just straight mocha, and Sumatra growths were practically always sold as Javas. Traders used the names of mocha and Java because of the high value placed upon these coffees by consumers, who, before Brazil dominated the market, had practically no other names for coffee. One of the most celebrated coffee cases under the Pure Food Act was tried in Chicago, February 1912. The question was whether, in view of the long-standing trade custom, it was still proper to call an Abyssinian coffee longberry mocha. The defendant was charged with misbranding because he sold as Java and mocha a coffee containing Abyssinian coffee. The court decided that the product should be called Abyssinian mocha, but since then, general acceptance has been obtained of the government's viewpoint as expressed in FID number 91, which was that only coffee grown in the province of Yemen in Arabia could properly be known as mocha coffee. Another important ruling, considering coffee buyers and sellers, prohibits the importation of green coffees coated with lead chromate, Prussian blue, and other substances to give the beans a more stylish appearance than they have normally. Such polished coffees find great favor in the European markets, but are now denied admittance here. The Board of Food and Drug Inspection decided in 1910 against a trade custom that has prevailed until then of calling Minas coffee Santos when shipped through Santos instead of Rio. For years, a practice obtained of rebagging certain American growths in New York. In this way, Bucaramangas frequently were transformed into Bogotas. Rios became Santos. Bahías and Victorias were sold as Rios, and the misbranding of Peaberry was quite common. A celebrated case grew out of an attempt by an American coffee importer and broker to continue one of these practices under the Pure Food Act made it a criminal offense. The defendants, who were found guilty of conspiracy and who were fined $3,000 each, mixed, repacked, and sold under the name PAL Bogota, a well-known Colombian mark, 84 bags of washed Caracas coffee. After an exchange of views with the United States Board of Food and Drug Inspection, the New York Coffee Exchange decided that, after June 1, 1912, it would abolish all grades of coffee under the exchange type number 8. The practice in Holland of grading Santos coffees by selecting beans most like Java beans and polishing and coloring them to add verisimilitude, known as manipulated Java, became such a nuisance in 1912 that the United States consuls refused to certify invoices to the United States unless accompanied by a declaration that the produce was pure Java, neither mixed with other kinds nor counterfeited. The United States Bureau of Chemistry ruled in February 1921 that Coffea Robusta could not be sold as Java coffee, or under any form of labeling which tended either directly or indirectly to create the impression that it was Coffea Arabica, so long and favorably known as Java coffee. This was in line with the Department of Agriculture's previous definition that the coffee was the seed of the Coffea Arabica or Coffea Liberica, and that Java coffee was Coffea Arabica from Java. Coffea Robusta was barred from deliveries on the New York Coffee Exchange in 1912. During the greater part of the year 1918, the United States government assumed virtually full control of the coffee trade. It was a wartime measure and was intended to prevent speculation in coffee contracts and freight rates, to cut down the number of vessels carrying coffee to this country so as to provide more ships for transporting food and soldiers to Europe. and to put the coffee merchants on rations during the stress of war. On February 14, 1918, importers and dealers were placed under license. And 2 days later, rules were issued through the Food Administration fixing the maximum price for coffee for the spot month in the futures market at 8.5 cents, prohibiting dealers from taking more than normal pre-war profits or holding supplies in excess of 90 days requirements, and greatly limiting resales. On May 8th, the United States Shipping Board fixed the official freight rate from Rio de Janeiro to New York at $1.50 per bag, which, without control, has risen to as high as $4 and more, as compared with the ordinary rate of 35 cents before the war. On January 12, 1919, 2 months after the armistice was signed, the rules were withdrawn, and the coffee trade was left to carry on its business under its own direction. Some well-known coffee marks. Practically every bag of good quality green coffee is imprinted with a brand which indicates by whom it was shipped. These imprints are known in the trade as green coffee marks. Many of them, through long usage, have become celebrated in international trade. One of the most famous was HLOG. This stood for Heaven's Light Our Guide and was owned by John O'Donoghue's sons. For many years, it was used on mocha coffee, but it is now out of existence. Other well-known mocha marks are MR, Maurice Reyes, with the figure of a camel, a star, or a deer's head between the letters LF or LB, Levirato Ferris, CF or CB, Caracanda Ferris. Bogota marks include PAL in triangle, Bogota, PA Lopez & Co., Camellia, Pinzon & Co., Salazar, AOL in triangle, Bogota, and Carmencita, Manizales, Excelso, Steinwender, Stoffregen & Co. Among the best-known Medellin marks are FAC&H, FA, Korea & Sons, PEC&C, Pedro Estrado Co., LMT&C, Luis M. Toro & Co., A&C, A. Angel & Co., ECS, Medellin, Excelso, Eppens, Smith Co., Balzac Pro, Medellin, Excelso, Balzac Bros, La Rambla, Banco Lopez, and Don Carlos, Medellin, Excelso, Steinwender, Stoffregen & Co., Caracas, Marx Show, JPP&H, Juan Pablo Perez & Sons, HLB&C, HL Bulton & Co., FST&C, Felipe S. Toledo & Co., JLG, JL Gorondona, and many others. Colster, Colster & Co., is a well-known Puerto Rico Cabello mark. Maricaibos bear numerous marks, chief among them which are MNC, Menda & Co., Cogojo, Cogojo & Co., Fossi, Fossi & Co., BM&C, Boyer Mola & Co., B&C, Bulm & Co., FST&C, Philippe S. Toledo & Co., VDR&C, Van Dessel, Rodo & Co., and JEC&C over RGE, J.E. Carret & Co. A prominent Mexican mark is PAN, Rafael de Castello & Co. Brazil coffee is usually marked merely with the initials of the firm or bank financing the shipment. Some representative Brazilian marks are Aranco in rectangle, Brazil, J.A. & Co. in rectangle, Brazil Rosebud, J.A. & Co. in rectangle, Brazil Urbana, all used by J. Aaron & Company. SSC in circle, Rio, SSC in triangle, Santos, both used by Steinwender, Stoffregen & Co., Sions, M. Mervens, Sion & Co., and Nossack, BSSC, in swastika used by Nossack & Co. There are hundreds of other marks. In most countries, they change so often that one rarely stands out above the rest. End of section 36, read to you by J.P. Liao, Vancouver, Canada, November 24, 2022.